Yeah, the New York controversy. Of course, there are two other mosque projects in New York City that are also attracting serious opposition. One has been stalled in Staten Island, and another in Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn is very controversial, very far away from ground zero. But around the country, outside of New York City, similar controversies are popping up all over the place. They're from Georgia to Tennessee, Wisconsin, Illinois, California. And you see the same kinds of complaints that are and fears that really that are exemplified at the Cordova House Initiative in other areas. I think most prominently in Tennessee, in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where there's a very nasty fight over a mosque, which became the subject of attacks from Republican congressional primary candidates and a gubernatorial candidate who were essentially saying that this mosque that was proposed in Murfreesboro was being proposed by radicals. It was the candidate for governor said that went so far as to say that Islam is not a religion; it's a cult. It shouldn't be afforded First Amendment rights. It's an ideology. So these are the kinds of ideas that are framing debates around the country. In California, which there's a small controversy in a town, a rural town near San Diego, Temecula, where there's opposition to a mosque that's needed by an expanding, a growing population of Muslim residents in that area, and one Baptist preacher who's a leader of the opposition has cited it as a mosques as hotbeds for radical activity, that there are cells embedded in them, there are cells embedded in mosques all over the country. So these are the kinds of ideas that are resonating at the grassroots level, not just in New York, but really coast to coast.
Let me go back to Daisy Khan for a minute. A very interesting response from the state, from Governor Patterson. They apparently are saying they would give you free state land if you'd simply move away from where you want to build this. And this is Governor Patterson's quote. He said, frankly, if the sponsors were looking for property anywhere at a distance that would be such that it would accommodate a better feeling among the people who are frustrated, I would look into trying to provide them with the state property they would need. What is your response to that?
Well, we were, you know, we had just begun our dialogue with the 9/11 families, and what we've, and I'd like to go back to what the earlier discussion was before I answer this question, is that there is a very strong link that people have, those people who oppose this project, and they cannot de-link the religion of Islam from the actions of the extremists. And so an entire Muslim community is being labeled as if they are, as if they belong to the extremist ideologies. And this is deeply troubling to us because this is why I think that, you know, in small pockets of the country we see these kinds of resistances because people just can't de-link the religion of Islam. So I think that even if we relocated, we still need to have a conversation because I don't think that just by us relocating, that mindset, that stereotyping is going to go away.
I agree with that, but are you taking him up on his offer? Are you considering leaving?
We will meet with anybody to discuss any option, but right now that is not our first option. First, we want to talk to people who matter, people who are in the neighborhood, people who have a stake in what we're doing, and we keep all our options open. However, right now we're not prepared to immediately, you know, change our plans.
And I'm wondering also, I mean, whether the opponents of this, of your center, do not realize the impact that this must be having in the Muslim world in terms of feeding into the perspective and the viewpoints of the extremists that the United States is hostile to Islam in general, and whether this is not actually making matters worse in terms of developing conflicts or between the Muslim world and the United States.
This project is also meant to be a counter to extremist ideologies, because it'll be led by people who are from the mainstream Muslim community, and the center will be a platform to amplify their voices. And our voices get drowned out by the voices of the extremists. And I would say if this project was defeated, then it would be really a win for the extremists. And it would be a loss for all of us who are trying to counter the extremists and, who stand for peace, and peace where it matters the most. There's too much at stake. And that is what happened when we spoke to the 9/11 families and we explained to them there's too much at stake. Many of them came around after we explained how this, would have a significant impact on not only how, America is perceived abroad, but really all we would be doing is strengthening the hand of the extremists, who are the very people that we're all trying to stand against.
Daisy Khan, are you afraid for yourself, for your family, for Muslims here in New York?
I'm afraid for my country.
Stephan Salisbury, I'd like to ask you about the willingness of so many Republican politicians to jump on this bandwagon, Sarah Palin, Newt Gingrich, and others, and their use of this issue and what you're seeing around the country.
Well, I think that it's an election year, and many Republicans see themselves threatened in some ways by the kind of maturing grassroots activism that the Tea Party movement has evolved into. And within that movement, a lot of these controversies around the country involve Tea Party activists, including the Mosque, the Cordoba House initiative in Manhattan, was initially inflamed by some folks who were leaders within the Tea Party movement, and you see that in California, you see it in Tennessee, where opposition to a mosque in Murfreesboro is being actively promoted by the Wilson County Tea Party. Here in Philadelphia, there have been a number of Tea Party rallies, and I've talked to people who've turned out. They've been actually small. This is not a hotbed of Tea Party activism here in the city, but I've talked to many people at these rallies, and one theme that runs through them is a belief that Muslims cannot be American. You see that they cite these weird notions of Islamic law, that Muslims hold allegiance to Islamic law, and that somehow this Islamic law is different from Jewish law or the canonical law. In Oklahoma, for instance, the Oklahoma legislature has passed a measure that will place on the ballot for voters of Oklahoma to decide the question of whether or not Oklahoma should ban the application of Sharia law, Islamic law, in Oklahoma. This is kind of weird in my view. Yeah, it's a pressure from this very far-right grassroots movement, which is, I think, particularly threatening to certain elements of the Republican Party, that has led to people like Sarah Palin and Newt Gingrich to try to siphon off some of the political energy and to perhaps stoke their own political ambitions.
I want to thank you both very much for joining us. It's interesting in New York in the heated race for governor between Andrew Cuomo and Rick Lazio, former congressman. It is the home page of the former congressman Rick Lazio's website. It is his major issue, is opposing this mosque. Stephan Salisbury with the Philadelphia Inquirer and Daisy Khan, I want to thank you very much for being with us, Executive Director of the American Society for Muslim Advancement. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. Back in a minute.